Well, hello, everybody. I am Stephanie Gray, and this is Holy Shift. This is a place where it's safe to talk about all things that are shifting on the planet right now, the consciousness shift that is happening with all of us. Um, and I have my very first guest here with me. I'd like to welcome Ari Hunniford. And she is not only a friend, I think I can call her a friend for
I would hope
sure.
so.
Also a bit of a mentor and a bit of a like trailblazer in my life. And she is a psychic, a spiritual coach, but also she is founder of Awkwardly Zen, which is an online spiritual community with over, last I checked, 20,000 members. Yeah,
Yeah.
in 5 countries. So it's international
No, 20 different locations now.
and 20 locations in what,
Yeah.
like in different countries too, not just
Yeah.
America. Yeah,
Five different. Is that accurate? I don't know. There's a lot. They can check
five
it
or more countries. Yeah, check it out, awkwardlyzen.com. But yeah, Ari is an amazing woman. She has an amazing story. And I thought, let's talk about community and the shift and what we see playing out for the future, for what's going on right now, and a little bit of your history too, Ari.
out.
Um, I wonder if you would feel okay sharing about how you started out in the corporate realm and moved into this, spiritual community situation.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me, Stephanie. I really appreciate it. And I'm so honored to be the first guest. And on your very aptly named, uh, what do you call it? Podcast, videocast, cast,
Whatever it is, it's a cast.
uh, connection. And yeah, my world has been very unique from the very beginning. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have not necessarily followed the typical path. There were some typical steps for me. I went to school. There was an expectation that I went to college, but luckily my folks were very um, open to whatever I wanted to go to school for. I just had to go to school. So I actually went to school for theater, acting and directing, and then realized that that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life for a lot of reasons. And um, I then ended up following in my father's shoes. So after owning some businesses and dabbling here and there, I ended up becoming a professional fundraiser and first worked for some other companies and did that. I traveled all over the country, but really a lot in Kansas, of all places, to help mostly small hospitals or other nonprofits raise lots of money for building projects or other things they were looking at doing. And then I started my own company doing that and really thrived. It was pretty astounding to watch that happen. And I really loved that work until I didn't. And I think that that was kind of where the shift started. And I also had a major tragedy in my life. I lost someone very close to me to their battle with their mental health. And um, dealing with the grief of that kind of led me in a different direction because I'm a big believer in pharmaceuticals when they're necessary and when needed. But I did not want to go down that path for myself if I could avoid it. So I started exploring natural options for my grief and for the emotions that that was bringing up. And that led me to essential oils. And then that led me to crystals and chakras. And then that led me to psychics and led me down this crazy path. And I say crazy with so much love because I embrace the crazy and love it so much. But as I started exploring more and more about spirituality, the more it just felt like being called home. And as I walked down that path, as I learned a little bit more, and as I opened to more things started happening. And I started realizing I had been channeling my entire life. I just didn't know it. Claircognizance, which is clear knowing, is my strongest gift. So I just thought I was really smart. And I am super smart. I love myself, but a lot of the things that I just knew weren't coming from me. It was coming from my team, which has been such a beautiful thing to realize. And once I started realizing I was channeling, I could start playing with that a little bit more and allowing that to happen a little bit more. And then I started exploring tarot. And at first, I'll admit, tarot was not my thing. I liked it. I liked pulling cards for myself, but I just couldn't imagine memorizing all of those cards and having that responsibility. And then I found a deck that resonated with me and everything clicked. And I realized that I didn't have to have every single thing memorized. I got to explore my intuition and my psychic abilities more and see how those morphed together. And while all that was going on, I was getting all these messages about starting something new. There's got to be this new thing. You're supposed to do this big thing. You're supposed to, and nobody could tell me what that was at first, which is so frustrating. And I know there's lots of people who listen who will resonate with that because it's like, what am I supposed to do? But it wasn't time yet. Um, so all of that came together to where we started Awkwardly Zen. I'll pause because I can go on forever. But is there anything else you wanted to know about the before Awkwardly Zen?
Well, no, that's beautiful. And I love how you said, what you were doing before was wonderful. It was great until it wasn't. And that's
Yeah.
exactly how I felt before I left, my 9 to 5. Um, I do so Awkwardly Zen started in what year? Was it 2020?
It was 2020. Yeah.
And I know that there was a calling, not only you had literally psychics and mediums telling you that this was going to happen, but
Yeah.
you were feeling that that it was time for something else, but you just weren't sure what. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. If you would have asked me in 2019 if I was going to be a psychic and a tarot reader, I would have laughed you right out the door, right? Like that was just not even remotely on my radar. Uh, and and so as I was doing readings in 2019 and going into 2020, and getting readings done, not doing them myself, but getting readings done, there was just this constant, and it didn't matter where I got the reading done, it was this constant, you're headed towards this big thing, there's this big thing coming, you're supposed to do this. And so me being who I am, which is a little type A and a little bit, let me solve the problem, let me solve the problem, I saw it as a problem to be solved. And so I was actively trying to figure out what was this big thing I was supposed to do. And there was just never any clarity because it wasn't time yet. Right. So, and now I can look back on that and go, yeah, absolutely. And then 2020 hit. And when COVID hit, it was the first time that I had stopped in, I don't even know, since maybe I was 14. Like I'm just a go, 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 go person. And I couldn't do my job. I was like so many people paused in my house. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna pause. And the universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it, took that opportunity to cut me off. And that statement doesn't ring true anymore. I can feel my guides being like, come on now. But at the moment, it felt like that, right? I wasn't getting any channeled messages. I all of a sudden was completely lost in what to do. But I was getting messages. The message was pause. The message
Mm.
was stop. And so I had created this little Zen garden in my yard and I communed with my squirrels out there, like ridiculously so, probably dangerously so, but I don't care. I loved them. And the bunnies and the birds, and I noticed things about nature I had never noticed before, like some leaves sparkle and others don't when the sun hits them, and things like that you would have thought growing up in the mountains and being outdoors, I would have noticed, but I never took the time. And that pause was so necessary. So when I have coaching clients that come in and they're panicked because they're like, all this stuff was happening, it was so exciting, and all of these things, and then now nothing. And they're just like I was, right? Did I do something wrong? I must have failed. So I really had to sit with that energy, and thank God I did, because then June, no, it was July of 2020. I just so happened to see a friend of ours, Kendara Laurel, has a group on Meetup, Introduction to Metaphysics, Denver. And I just so happened to see she was doing an online gathering. And so I jumped. I went to the online gathering, and it was this woman, Lori Hewitt. Now, I had met Lori Hewitt once before at a fair, a psychic fair here in Colorado. And she's life-changing. Lori Hewitt is, I'm sure she will be a guest of yours at
Yes,
some
she
point.
will.
She is life-changing. And she was in that moment. And she was one of the people who was like, you have this big thing coming. And at that point, I was working on a book and she was like, that's not it, but keep working on it. And I was like, all right. So that was before 2020. But then I go to this event and she picked me out of the group of however many people to do an example for. And I could not tell you what she said in that reading, but it was enough that I thought I need to get a full reading with this woman. And because it felt like when she picked me, all of the sudden it was time again. I could feel it was time. It was time to move forward. It was time to do something. So I had a full reading with her a couple days later, and in that reading, she said, "You're supposed to start a meetup." And I had already created the concept of Awkwardly Zen in the name. I already had a list of things that I had channeled in meditations of things that I eventually see it becoming, but I did not know what that first step was. And she said, you're supposed to start a meetup. And I thought, that's crazy. Meetup is in person. Why would I do that? And she said, no, it's switched to online. And I thought, okay. So that afternoon, I started Awkwardly Zen with no idea of what it was going to look like. And I thought, I'll come up with something. And 2 days later, I looked down at my phone and it said, you have a new member. And I thought, oh, that's fun. And I opened it up and I had 60 people. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to figure something out now. So I came home and I meditated and I just channeled this whole thing. And I called all my friends. It was still very early in COVID time, and I was like, please come to my back porch. We'll socially distance. Like, let me tell you. And I poured my heart out to them of all of these things that had come through and what I wanted to do. And at that moment, Amber Toach, who is Awkwardly Zen COO, another amazing psychic who was not at that time or who had not embraced it yet, she said, we're in, meaning the group. What do you need from us? And she took it from being my thing to being our thing. And there's so many pivotal moments in Awkwardly Zen that I can look back and go, oh my gosh, if that wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't be what we are. If that wouldn't have happened, then we wouldn't. And that one is a huge one because if that wouldn't have happened, I would have done what I always did, which was make it my thing and drag everyone with me, and then get exhausted and get burnt
Right.
out.
Yeah.
And instead, it turned into this group effort. And not everyone who is sitting on that back porch are still involved. People come and go and things change, but it did make it about community instantly. And all of a sudden, it wasn't my thing, it was our thing. And that is an energy that we've really tried to keep throughout all these years.
Right. And I do want to touch on that because that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. It feels like that is the energy of what is being brought forward into this new consciousness that we're experiencing and that is rolling out for us on the planet.
Yeah.
And I did want to talk a little bit about how Awkwardly Zen, because I'm a member and it's changed my life,
Oh,
talking about what the differences are from other online spiritual communities, in your opinion.
yeah.
Um, Personally, I think it is just what you said,
Yeah.
right? It is community for community's sake. But I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it's tough. And I do not in any way, shape, or form want to act like the other spiritual communities out there are doing something incorrectly because I think that there are so many different ways to be spiritual, to grow and to create support. And I think some people need the freedom of Awkwardly Zen and I can think whatever I want and I can change my mind every other day. And some people want a little more guidance, right? They want a little more dogma,
Yeah.
and they want a guru. And I've always said since day one, like I'm not a guru. And I have no intention of being a guru. I have stepped into a coaching role and I definitely teach for sure, but I know this much, right? And I learned just as much from the person who literally woke up one day and thought, I need to explore my spirituality. I learned just as much from them as they can learn from me, just in different ways. And I think that's the energy that is different, is the idea that we're not trying to say you should do this. As a matter of fact, our number one rule is there's no shoulding, right? Like there's no you don't have to should it. It's I've experienced this. And then that way the other person can go, "Ooh, I want to experience that too." Or they can go, yeah, I don't really like that. I'm going to go over here. And it has created this beautiful flow of just insanely cool people who pop in, pop out. Some people will go with us all the time. Some people come in for a season. Some people are there for years. Some people have left. We just had a person pop in who I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't think I've seen you since 2022." And she's going through a major change in her life. And so to know she had a place to land, and everyone comes in so apologetic when that happens, and I always laugh because I'm like, no, like go do what you need to do and then come back when it feels right. Or don't find something that works for you. And I think that's the difference, right? Is we don't have an expectation that you do a certain thing to stay in our community other than be kind, right? Don't try to hijack the conversation, allow the conversation to go in different directions. We have a whole set of guidelines, which is just to like keep us safe. But really it all comes down to that shoulding. We're not looking for teachers to come in and force their ideas on someone. We're looking for teachers to come in and periodically teach, but in our conversations, we're all just sharing what's going on with us. It's not about teaching in that moment.
Right. And if anything, it's about empowering the self to
Mm,
be able to figure out, okay, what is mine? Am I comfortable in hearing this? Or is it time for me to like blip out for a little bit and come back in if I need to? Like that is what I love most is like there's this discernment that you get to experience for yourself. And in that, it is a teaching situation, but you're teaching yourself and you have permission to do that. And
yeah.
so that is what I think is so you know new and about the shift is that it is about empowerment. It is about also gathering with others, but not needing to fix anyone, not needing to have everyone have the same point of view. It's
Mhm.
about heart-centered, alignment with folks and just being in community. And that I feel like that is just so important for what's coming, for what's here now and what's going to come.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is I was guided from I call them my spirit team, and that is a group of ancestors and guides and angels and whatever other deities want to pop in and help me, which they do, and I'm so grateful for. But from the very beginning, it was this cannot be ego based, right? And that's hard because this girl's got a pretty healthy ego. And I like to shine, right? I can fill a room and I know that about myself. And I don't want to squish that in myself. I want to allow myself to be who I am. However, I needed to set checks and balances in place right off the bat, to make sure that I wasn't one doing this all by myself because it's a lot of pressure to try to be all things to that many people. And then two, to make sure that I had people around me who were willing to be like, time out, Ari. Like, you've taken it too far.
Mm.
And luckily, my own spiritual journey, my own spiritual growth, because I am actively still working on myself, has allowed me to not be that girl I was 10, 20 years ago who needed all of the attention. But instead, I'm someone who likes to come in and entertain when it's necessary or when it's fun to do so, but also really loves watching other people glow and watching other people step up. And those steps that we put in place, I have a lead team that we meet weekly and we just check in with one another, make sure that everything's good. Here's what's going on. Here's the decisions that need to be made. What do you guys think? So that I'm not doing it by myself. We also have an ethics committee, which knock on wood barely ever has to meet, but who's there if the big things come up, right? And we've had to do that, right? We've had to be a part of that before. And it's just so wonderful to know I have those things to help me lead this community. Which is why I'm always like, it's not about me. It's about all of us who have come together, not to mention all of the amazing volunteers. I mean, it's a volunteer run organization, which is mind boggling to almost everyone I talk to out in the business world, right? Like, what do you mean you don't pay anyone? And I'm like, I don't even pay myself. So this has all been people who realize the importance, people who realize the value, people who want to help other people explore their spiritual path, stepping up. I mean, you were a moderator, one of our first moderators who came in outside of me, and it's been such a beautiful thing to watch it adjust and adapt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so I want to ask you if you had any advice for somebody who's feeling that calling, that shift inside of them, that, how we were saying earlier, it was great until it wasn't. And they're
Yeah.
feeling that like that desire for something new and something maybe more heart-based. What what would be just a couple nuggets of wisdom you would impart?
Yeah, it's a tough one because it is going to be individual for everyone on their journey. And there's a lot of people out there who will tell you very different information than what I'm about to say. So I would say follow your heart first and foremost. That being said, I do think that there is a way to find balance while exploring this. It is very tempting on this path sometimes to say, I'm going to walk away from all earthly things and go into the metaphysics. And you and I have both done that in our world, and we know how hard it is. So if you can find a way to do both for a while, I highly suggest that. Go ahead and make the money doing whatever while you're exploring this new thing. However, another big thing I would say is don't be afraid to make money within metaphysics. There's this stigma that kind of goes around with a lot of our people who believe that this is a gift and I should give it for free. And while I understand that, um, if you really believe that the universe is providing for us, there's more than enough for everyone. And I know that that is a loaded thing to say, and it's a very simple thing to say, but it's much more in depth than that. But I always joke, but there's an element of truth in it that I deserve to eat and I deserve to go on vacation and I deserve to be able to do all of the things that other people do while providing my services. Doctors provide services. And then the other thing that's been amazing is I have learned over the years that if I do provide this for a fee, it gives me the ability to give it away when I really feel moved to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. And these are all money-based things because that's a huge part of my world right now is how do I find that balance within my world? And I think it's real. And we don't talk about it very openly because it's scary to talk about money, right? It's scary to sit there across from somebody and say, yeah, I run this giant group and I do this and I do this, and I still have money struggles. I still have things that I'm trying to work out, but it's real. And I want people to know that going into it. The other thing, the other main thing, and then I'll pause so that you can speak too, but I don't want to forget, is that it's not going to be as scary as you think it is. There's this idea that we all have that the people in our lives will not and cannot understand. And you're right, some of them will not and cannot understand, but you will be shocked about how when you slowly start to share who you are with the world, how many people in your own circle are fascinated, are interested, are want to know. I was just at every year we go to the same Christmas Eve party, and it's at our Catholic neighbors, and they're lovely, lovely people. But I've always kept it kind of buttoned down because it's their home and it's a their holiday. Not originally, but and their daughter was just talking to me this last time, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I told her, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, can I get a tarot reading?" And if I wouldn't have said I'm a psychic and a tarot reader, she wouldn't have had that person who's in her life to explore this with. And so me being brave enough to say, yes, this is what I am, or this is what I'm exploring, or this is what I'm doing, really gives other people a chance to grab a hold of that, to shift their own energy, to not see it as something scary because it doesn't have to be. So if we don't normalize it, it's going to be really hard for it to get normalized.
Well, that's beautiful, and I absolutely agree. And I think that's the magic of having community
Mhm.
as Awkwardly Zen has created, because we get to sort of practice what it feels like to sort of come out of the heart-based metaphysical psychic closet, however you want to put it, spiritual closet,
Yeah.
and and get to understand what it's like to just have those conversations with other people. and
Yeah.
it's permission giving. And then that's how we can slowly, ease it out into our world, like you were just talking.
Yeah.
And then that person can have permission to do the same. And that's just an absolutely beautiful thing.
Well, and I think the interesting thing about it to me is it's weird, right? Like the whole thing is so weird. I've not yet met anyone who has gone down this path who was like, everything was butterflies and rainbows and beauty, right? Like it's messy and it's as a matter of fact, if somebody is saying it's all been butterflies and rainbows, I, I'd have some serious questions for them because like if you're truly doing the work, it's not fun. It can be, and it can be so rewarding, but there are moments that your soul is torn out of your body and out on the table. And I think that is terrifying for people. It was for me,
Yeah.
right? The idea, like the things I say out loud now, oh my gosh, if you would have asked Ari of 10 years ago, would you ever admit that? Absolutely not. But I tell you what, the freedom
Mm.
and the lightening of my whole being as I choose to make choices on a daily basis to be more comfortable in my own skin. It's amazing. And then to watch a whole community of people do the same thing, there is nothing cooler than watching somebody. Kara is a perfect example. Kara came in, had a different name online, never came on camera, barely ever spoke. Slowly but surely started getting a little more confident. Jacqueline, same thing, more confident, more confident, more confident. And now they're both amazing moderators for us and help in such big ways because we gave them a safe space to become who they really are. And I think that's just I cannot I'm so grateful to be the one who gets to help that with everybody else.
Absolutely. It facilitates change in a very personal and deep way. And I mean, I'm testament to that as well.
Mm,
And I mean, that's why I wanted to have you on, is because community, as we're going through this shift, is necessary. And
yeah.
the fact that Awkwardly Zen is set up and like doing it already, I just wanted people to know about how incredible that is. And yeah.
I appreciate that. I will say when I got the message about Awkwardly Zen and we started heading that day I did that meditation, um, what I also heard was there are other groups who will be doing the same thing. And as we widen, it's like one of those maps, you see as we widen and as our energy gets bigger, there will be crossover. And we've already seen that, right? We've already seen
Absolutely.
people, so far, no one who's doing exactly like us, but a lot of people who are doing interesting things across the world. And I think that's just it. So if Awkwardly Zen is not your thing, please go find another group that resonates with you more. That is every time when I see somebody and they're like, yeah, or I'll get a message from someone and they're like, I went to this and I didn't really like it. And I'm like, cool,
Yeah.
totally fine. Please keep going. Because there's so many ways to be spiritual.
Absolutely. And speaking of crossover, and then I have a final question for you. You and I did a crossover with Awkwardly Zen and with Creative Nectar, and we combined the two communities to do just a small, short 2-hour event, and it
Yes.
was amazing. And
Yeah.
although one is, a creative community, but heart-based, and the other is a spiritual heart-based community, the crossover was beautiful. Yeah.
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 Absolutely. And I think we're seeing that more and more and more places. Collaboration is something that pops up in my astrological chart, in my human design chart, all over. I am meant to bring people together. And even just this morning I had a new idea I'm not ready to share yet, but of like how do we do that? And I think that if you are one of those people who struggles with that, and you don't know how to collaborate, you don't know how to come together, it is really beautiful that there are so many options out there, both free and paid, that
Mm.
you can do. So it's like follow your heart, find that shift in yourself, right? That is like this one is the one I want. And at the same time, don't hesitate to leave something that's not working for you anymore.
Yep.
Because it's totally true. People outgrow groups. They shift who they're thinking, or something changes in the group and the energy doesn't feel right anymore. And we have so much fear of failing that it's like, well, I have to stick with this. No, you don't.
No, you
Do
don't.
whatever you want. If it doesn't feel good anymore, then move on to the next thing and see if it feels good. You can always come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Using our bodies and how things feel in our bodies as like a guidance system is really
Yeah.
important. Yeah. So, okay, I have a final question for you if you feel like
Okay.
answering. What is shifting in your life right now?
Very loaded question for sure.
Yep.
And some of it is in my own space still and kind of percolating. So I'll just say that. Very generally, kind of everything,
Yeah.
right? There is so much shifting in our world, and I have personally chosen to shift into I have faith that it is all for our greatest good. And I think that that's a really hard thing to say right now. And I know that some people cannot possibly be there because some of the atrocious things that are happening in our world and in our country right now. And I want to make sure I'm very clear that I do not condone those things. But I also feel like there is this tear that is happening in what we know. And I think sometimes that pain of that tear can be something that turns into something really beautiful. From my darkest moments in my existence have come the most amazing things, including Awkwardly Zen.
Mm,
And so I just have to believe that that is part of what's happening. And with that, I have shifted into much more compassion, much more finding joy where I can, laughing instead of screaming, because it's so ridiculous. Like it's all just so crazy. And then actively looking for the beautiful moments, right? The moments of connection, the not trying to sugarcoat, not trying to spiritually bypass, because believe me, I do think there's some I jokingly say, but there's always some truth in joking. I think that, a lot of deities carry swords,
mm,
and I've always keep that in mind. And I think for some cases it's just a safety thing, and in some cases we've got warriors, right, who have led the way. Um, we're stepping into this beautiful female, feminine warrior energy of we've got this.
mm,
We've got this. And I certainly feel that way. There is a piece of art, I believe it's in Chicago, where this woman is sitting in a meditative pose and she has these cracks. And then the light is shining through these cracks. And I've always been drawn to it. I've always loved this piece. And I feel like my personal cracks are getting bigger and bigger, and it is uncomfortable
mm.
as hell.
Yes.
But it is so exciting to think about who I personally am stepping into, what I am able to do. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, could I do what I'm doing now? I would have said no. And so I just keep thinking, what will I be in another 10 years if I allow those cracks to actually open
Mm,
instead of trying to keep myself small? And I am done being small.
mm,
And I think anyone who knows me would go, Ari, you've never been small. But I think what people need to remember is who someone is on the outside and who they are on the inside can be very different. And I've put myself in situations my entire life that have kept me smaller than I am supposed to be.
mm,
And I don't want to do that anymore. So I think there's going to be a big year of transformation in 2025.
mhm,
I'm excited for it. I'm terrified of it.
mm.
There's a lot of emotions and sadness and things that come up with it, but I can see the beauty on the other side of it already. I can see that glimmer, and that's just what keeps me going.
Mm. Beautifully said. And I would just like to second that I'm feeling into that as well. And yeah,
Yeah.
here's to the shift and the transformation, even as it is uncomfortable, because it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I would rather feel that discomfort than go back to the way, to the smaller version of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I look back on that, and I think everyone has this, right? And this is what I think gets lost in our society because we are pushed to do more, be more, do all of that. And I want to make sure people understand that is not what this is.
Mm-mm,
This is not hustle culture. This is not make millions of dollars, even though that might be a part of it, and I'm all for it. But this is about when I wake up in the morning more often than not, I want to feel free. I want to feel secure. I want to feel joyful. And if those things are not happening, what things can I shift in myself to allow those things to happen? Because there's a lot of outside things that are going to try to affect that. But everything is starting from the core of me, for
Mm,
me, right? And the core of you, for you. And I think the more I embrace that, the more I understand that, the more I understand that I have always gotten through every tough moment that there has ever been, the more it's like, what am I worrying about?
yeah.
What am I worrying about? And that does not mean I don't worry. My little overthinking brain, right? But I just am also aware that I don't need to. I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah. And even if we do have that worry, because I'm the same way, I'm getting used to calling myself back home and being like,
Yeah.
you're all right, you're all right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, we live in a society that has encouraged us to try to find easy answers. And I do think sometimes the answers are easy. Sometimes there are these magic little buttons, even in spirituality, where it's like, oh, well, that was easy. But when it feels hard, when it feels overwhelming, when it feels heavy, that's where the juicy bit is, right? Like
Yeah.
that's where it's like, ooh, okay, there's something there. Like, how can we just get in there and blow it up, own it, because let what needs to be with us stay with us and the rest of it go away. And there are so many of us right there that when it happens, and as it's happening, I should say, because I've watched it happen with people, the world better watch out because
Yep.
it's going to be a totally different world when all this light is shining.
Yeah, you can already see a lot of
Totally, it's
rumors
totally
totally
different.
happening.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole
And
conversation.
yes, and I just want to send an absolute huge amount of gratitude to all of those people that have come before us
Hmm.
because when I think about some of our partners who've been doing this for 50 years, right? And then I think about the people before them who really truly were in danger, really truly were hidden, really truly couldn't be who they wanted to be. Um, thank goodness, thank universe, thank God, thank whatever for them and the journey they have had to hand us this world that we truly can sit here in a digital world, you in Kansas City, me in Denver, and have conversations like this. That's so amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Ari, thank you so much. This has been so, I love talking to you, and this has been no exception. So I just so appreciate you and what you're doing in the world and what you will continue to do. I can't wait to see how it unfolds. And for thank you, listeners. I will put all of Ari's information down below, and you can reach her there again, awkwardlyzen.com. And yeah, just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. This was super fun.
Absolutely.